All right, we'll give everybody just a couple more minutes to get in. I've started the live stream. This is live streaming to YouTube, Facebook, and also getting recorded. So we'll have this available on the cloud for those who couldn't make it in or need to rewatch it. I would ask everybody to stay muted unless you have a question and we call upon you. All right. All right. Give people a little bit of an introduction and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for attending. My name is Patrick Botz-Forbes. I am the LAFD CERT Central Bureau Coordinator. And this presentation is going to be on neighborhood staging areas and initial response to a disaster. This is what we have set up for you to follow after an earthquake or other kind of disaster. And again, if you please would stay muted unless you have a question. That means please do not unmute yourself unless you have a question. So I discovered that the live caption actually blocks the slideshow. That's interesting. The controls for the slideshow. I can move them good. All right. After an earthquake, or any kind of disaster, really, hurricane, tornadoes, the professional first responders will be automatically and immediately overwhelmed. We see this time and time again, especially in the Midwest and the South, where we get blizzards, snowstorms, hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever, on a seasonal basis. And we also see this when earthquakes occur, such as Ridgecrest a few years ago. As soon as the earthquake occurred, everyone, 911 was completely flooded. They rang busy. Their fire department was immediately overwhelmed, completely deployed. We saw the same thing during Northridge. And we just know this will happen. So it's really up to us as members of our community, as members of our neighborhood, to really respond to our neighbors and help them out, the ones who do need the help, because no one else is coming. What you do during the first few hours of a disaster will actually save lives. And we get this all the time, especially with those who've been trained in the CERT program, that they're waiting for a call. They're waiting to hear from the fire department. They're waiting to hear from their emergency management department to get that rally call and say, okay, now you can mobilize, and wait till you mobilize, wait till you hear from us to mobilize. And that call doesn't happen. And the reality is that they're overwhelmed. They simply can't call everybody who they've trained and say, okay, now's your time to shine, go help your neighbors. So we really rely on neighbors helping neighbors, and neighbors knowing, now I need to get going. I need to help out. I need to check on my family. I need to make sure that we're safe, and then go see what my neighbors need so that we can do some good. One of the things we teach in CERT is that you're going to go to your neighborhood staging area. The question is, where is your neighborhood staging area? And what is it? Well, the reality is, unless this has been defined, there is no staging area. No one magically has created this. If you have a CERT program and it is teaching you the basics, Um, for most of the country, it is catch and release. The instructors teach the program, and then that's it. And that, for the longest time, has been a major problem even in the city of Los Angeles. So what we're trying to do in Los Angeles is define these neighborhood staging areas. We're going to work with the community, work with the neighborhood councils, work with um, local houses of worship, local businesses, and get these staging areas defined, and then let everybody know where they are so that you now know where to go. If you know where you're going to go, you go there right after the earthquake. Even if you don't have a way to communicate, your radios don't work, your cell phones don't work. If everybody who's trained goes to that staging area, you have the makings of a team that can now respond into the community. And these neighborhood staging areas should really be out of the public view. There is a instinct to set it up in the town square or set it up where it's very public and very visible so that people know to go there. The reality is that you're going to get people going there. They're not going to be you. They're not going to be other responders. They're going to be the general public who have been through this traumatic event, and they don't know what to do, and they have questions and they want answers, and they're going to bog down the staging area and make it inoperable, make it unable to function, make it unable so that you can organize your team and get them out there because you're answering questions like, when's the power coming back? Is it safe to drink my water? Things like that, which they by all rights have and need to know, but it's not something that we should be focused on answering. So if we can have our staging areas be behind a building or in the back of a parking lot, that's ideal, somewhere out of the way. These staging areas should be centralish to the neighborhood that you're serving. If you're on the far edge of a neighborhood, your damage assessment maps are going to be rather askew as you try and figure out the best way to map from one side to the other. You can be in the center, and nothing's going to be perfect and no neighborhood is going to be perfect, but if you can be somewhat central, then you can send out teams in each geographic direction. And of course, we aren't going to just show up at some random location. We want to have an MOU or memorandum of understanding with the property owner. So this is agreed upon. The property owner knows that we're going to be there, and there's a written agreement in place. So this happens. What we're trying to do are set up neighborhood staging area kits, and that's through partnership with neighborhood councils and other block clubs and other sources that can help fund this. And these neighborhood staging area kits are going to have everything you need for the first 3 hours of operation. Maps of the area, clipboards, whiteboards so you can track your teams out there, two-way radios so that you have good testable communications out to the teams, and then medical resupply as the teams come back and they need to restock what they've spent bandaging and dressing injuries. They can replenish from the staging area so that they have supplies for the next run. Obviously, you don't want to do this in places that are going to be problematic. And the two places that we hear the most are fire stations and schools. Schools are always problematic because if this happens during the school day, the school goes into lockdown until parents come pick up their students or their kids. And this is a problem because then we can't go on campus while the school's in lockdown. Fire stations are also problematic because fire stations are going to be deployed. We're not going to be able to knock on a fire station door and be let in. So we don't want to have that as our primary location, knowing that we can't get in there. The person who's in charge of a staging area is generally going to be the staging manager. That is the position, the ICS position. And the first person there at the staging area under ICS becomes the person who's in charge, staging manager, until relieved by someone who is more appropriate to be in that position. And that's in terms of training and skill, and sometimes you might have someone who's actually more qualified to be the staging manager, but there's other needs for that person that are more pressing. And so it's not always cut and dry who is going to be the staging manager. Sometimes you go there, you consider yourself definitely not the person who is most suitable to be the staging manager, and you don't want to assume control. And then you have a bunch of people waiting around looking at each other trying to figure out who's running the show and no one is stepping up. It really is one of those things, somebody take action, somebody do something. And we've defined the step-by-step guide on how to do this, and this is what we're going to be explaining tonight, so that it is formulaic. It is something that you can easily look at. We have the documentation there, so you just follow the step-by-step guide, and then as soon as someone who is more qualified shows up, if you feel like you need to, you can ask them to take over. Under ICS, the person in charge of an incident is the incident commander or the operations chief. For CERT purposes, for community emergency response team, we don't use that anymore, simply because under almost no circumstances will a CERT member be the incident commander. Usually we're going to be attached to something much larger than a local incident where we're the first person there. There's always going to be something bigger. And so just to avoid the confusion, we've taken incident commander out of the vernacular and the training. The reason why we use the position of staging manager is because we're setting up staging areas, and the person in charge of a staging area is the staging manager. The staging area is attached to a larger incident and is providing a place for people to go and organize, and then usually they tie in higher. What under ICS, a person can have multiple roles. So the first person there is going to be all the roles: the incident commander, the operations chief, the planning section chief, the staging manager, until they can delegate those roles to other people. So the staging manager is going to have additional roles. You're the first person there, you're going to be doing everything. You're going to be setting up the staging area. You're going to be communicating on the radio. You're going to be checking people in until you can delegate those roles to other people. And in the city of Los Angeles, CERT falls under the fire department. So what we're trying to do is, once you get set up as a staging area and start getting people checked in, we're hopefully going to be linking up with the fire department and get under their ICS incident command system chain so that you have direct connection to the fire department response. We develop a 10-step flexible guide for responders to set up the staging area and to play out teams. That's what we're going to be going over tonight. Step 1, this should make the most sense. Take care of yourself and your loved ones first. Step 2, monitor your local neighborhood or battalion radio channel. Check in when you can. Step 3, wear long pants, closed-toed shoes, and personal protective equipment. You don't want to get hurt when you're out there. Step 4, report to your closest neighborhood staging area. Step 5, if you're the first one at the staging area, congratulations, you're the staging manager. You're in charge. Step 6, next 3 people who show up at the staging area, they're the first damage assessment team. Get them out. Step 7, next teams are either going to be damage assessment teams, incident response teams, or they're going to augment the staging area. But this is all based upon what's being radioed in, how bad it is out there. Step 8, as the response grows, you definitely want to hold responders back and start augmenting the staging area. If you're the only person there and you have multiple teams out there, it is bad news for you. Step 9, response teams need to have separate communications for communicating within the team, that's inter-team, and then communicating back to staging. And step 10, you want to be communicating with other staging areas and up to the fire department response. So going back to step 1, take care of yourself and your loved ones first. If you don't do this, if you have family members who are injured, your house has suffered severe damage, your mind is going to be elsewhere. You're more of a detriment to the rest of the team by being out there in the field when you're worried about your loved ones or your home than if you never showed up in the first place. So only help your neighbors out if everything is under control and everything is secure on your home front. Always, always, always take care of yourself and your loved ones first. If you're injured, don't show up. You don't want to become a liability. You don't want to bring a victim to the incident. Step 2, turn on your radio. Monitor your local neighborhood or battalion radio channel, and then check in when you can. You're listening for situational awareness. You want to know how bad it is out there. And as soon as you get a chance to assess your home and family and give that situational awareness update as well. This is CERT 12, Cabreel 1. My family is safe. There's no damage to my home. It's as simple as it is. But you start hearing people reporting in. This is Rose Hills 1. We have a couple buildings collapsed, and my sister fell down the stairs and isn't moving. She might have broken something. That quickly tells you how bad things are out there, and it preps you for the reality of what you're going to be seeing when you step outside. Also, if you start you're hearing everybody reporting in and there's no damage, no injuries, you now know this probably wasn't that bad an incident, and maybe you don't need to set up the staging area and send out response teams. But if you start hearing that there's damage and injuries, you definitely do. Step 3, before you leave the house, make sure you're wearing long pants and closed-toed shoes. Most of the injuries occur from an earthquake after the earthquake. And that's because people are stepping on things that are broken, doing things that get themselves injured. If you're in shorts and flip-flops, you will get injured. But if you have closed-toed shoes, doesn't have to be safety-toed, but that's better if it is. But as long as you can step on something without, shards of glass going into your feet, you're in much better shape than a lot of the people who are going to be out there. And there's going to be debris, things that have fallen over. It's very easy to cut yourself if you're not wearing long pants. Optionally, and especially if you're a CERT member, you want to have your CERT vest on to identify yourself and be visible. Helmet, goggles. There's a very good chance you're going to bump into something, and that little green bump cap, which is part of the uniform, is going to protect you and keep you safe. Goggles, there's going to be debris in the air. You don't want that getting into your eyes and taking you out. N95 mask, again, there's going to be debris in the air. You don't want to breathe that in. That N95 mask is critical. And gloves. Wearing gloves, it's strongly recommended, because if you pick something up and it's sharp or hot, that glove is going to protect you. When we train in this environment, a pandemic environment, and it's not post-pandemic, we still have a pandemic going on, our standard equipment, the goggles, gloves, goggles, N95 mask, even the gloves, they're the same PPE that you have EMTs wearing in the field, fire department wears in the field. Same thing that you would want to be wearing if you're exposed to other people who are possibly sick. And it's very easy for us to train with this stuff, and we should get used to it by wearing the N95 mask at minimum, because we remember how we train. And if you're out there and there's smoke, there's dust, and you never trained with an N95 mask on, you're not going to think to put it on. You're going to breathe some of that stuff in, and you're going to become injured. Of course, it is a pandemic, so as you're training in the field with other people, that's going to protect you as well. So during all of our in-person trainings, we will be providing the N95 masks and making sure that you're wearing them, so you get used to breathing with them on, because it is a different experience. Step 4, you're going to meet at your local neighborhood staging area. Again, if you're the first person there, congratulations, you're the staging manager. Once you get there, if you are the first person there, you want to radio the team members. Actually, before you even leave the house, you want to radio your neighbors and let them know that you are going to the neighborhood staging area. And if you do have neighbors who are trained or someone you can go with, that's ideal. We don't want to do things alone, but this is the one exception, is sometimes you will be traveling alone to the staging area so you can meet with other team members. You do have neighbors who can dispatch with you, that's ideal. Go as a team, go as pairs. Just, if you can't, then don't. If you can, do it. On your way in, you do want to observe and report any incidents. You should have the forms with you. You should have blank paper. You should have a notebook or something you can write on. So if you can do that, document it, because chances are you're going to be returning and to see what was going on about this and investigating it during your damage assessment. And certainly if you're seeing any help signs, you want to document those so that you can get a team out there to report and investigate those. Again, first person at the staging area is the staging manager. If you happen to be that person, you're going to report on the radio that you have arrived at the staging area, that it is safe, and that other neighborhood disaster team members should report to the staging area. Sometimes it does take somebody telling people what to do over the radio to actually get them to do it. When you get there, you're going to pull out the personnel sign-in form, the Form 2. Put it on a clipboard, sign in. Put a pen out with it so that you can have other people sign in. Staging manager should be the first person signed in on this report. If you forget to sign in, you know, accountability. Can you account for your own? If something happens to you later on, you never sign in at the staging area, nobody knows to go look for you and make sure that you're safe. As people start reporting in over the radio, have a Form 1 set up and start documenting the issues that are being reported in, or the rapid needs assessment form. Start documenting what's coming in over the radio so that you can investigate them. Oftentimes we have questions about people who don't think they're physically fit enough to be a responder. And the reality is that we have roles for everybody. If you're not physically fit enough to be on a damage assessment team or an incident response team, you're not physically fit enough to be walking miles with a heavy backpack, there's roles for you at the staging area if you can get there. There's even roles that you can do from your own home. We have plenty of need for people on radio. We have plenty of need for people who are scribes. So there's always a role for somebody, for everybody, even if you're not physically fit enough. The next 3 people who show up at the staging area are the first damage assessment team. You want to appoint the damage assessment team leader, radio operator, and scribe. You're going to have them sign in, and that Form 2, that personnel form, has a place for people to rate themselves. They can rate themselves in radio and scribing, and you get a gauge of how well they are. If you have someone who rates themselves a 4 or 5 on radio, and you have another person who rates themselves a 4 or 5 in scribing, those are the obvious people to be radio operator and scribe. You don't want to hand the person with a 1 in radio a radio and expect them to be able to function. And also might not be a great idea to hand someone who rates themselves a 1 scribe the clipboard, because A, they might not know what to do with it, and B, you might not be able to read their handwriting after. Sometimes it's easier to pick the radio operator and scribe, and the third person is going to be the team leader, than it is to pick the team leader first and then pick the other roles. The duty of the team leader is really to maintain situational awareness and safety of all the team members. Their sole duty is to get the team back safely. Radio operator is going to be proactively communicating over the radio with staging, letting staging know where the team is, what's going on, and what the incidents are that are being discovered as the team does the damage assessment. Scribe is going to be documenting information. They're going to be documenting information about the incident and communication with staging. And one thing, they're a pair with the radio operator. It's really ideal if the scribe is documenting the 5 bullet points, the 5 W's, for the radio operator to be able to read off when they communicate over the radio. When you name the teams should be logically named. They're going to be a damage assessment team, they're a damage assessment team. They're going to be an incident response team, they're going to be an incident response team. And you can abbreviate these. Damage assessment teams are DAT, incident response teams are IRTs. You can name them geographically. If the team is heading east, west, north, or south, DAT east, DAT west, DAT north, DAT south. Or Failing all of that, you can just choose something like Alpha Bravo Delta, Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta. And what I do advise is that you don't reuse team names because it gets confusing. If your damage assessment team Alpha or DAT Alpha, and then DAT Alpha comes back, and now your that same team becomes an incident response team, but you're naming it Alpha, and you're talking about it over the radio, it can be very confusing about, well, was this DAT Alpha or is this IRT Alpha? Who are these people? But if your DAT Alpha comes back first and they then become IRT Echo, there's no confusion about what that team is. Before you leave the staging area, always test your radio communication. Walk out 20 feet, radio back staging, and let them know that you are that you can communicate, and they should respond over the radio as well. So you test radio communication in both directions. My Zoom is locked up. Chin, are you on? Can you let me know if you can still hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you, Patrick.
Unfortunately, my controls are locked up. So let me see if I can stop sharing. I can't. I'm gonna have to close Zoom and come back in. That's great. Yeah.
You might need to restart.
Where's the microphone signal?
Up here, isn't it?
It should be.
You guys know you're unmuted. Patrick, you're muted.
Can't hear you.
Try that again. All right, I would appreciate it if everybody stays muted, and that means please do not unmute yourself unless you have a question. Go ahead and reshare my screen. Right, I'm going to mute everybody again. Please do not unmute yourself unless you have a question, or I will block the unmute button. Technology is great. It always works perfectly. There's never any problems. All right, picking up where we left off. So when you, and we saw this at our last drill, before you dispatch your teams, make sure they know where they're going. Make sure you're on the same page. We provide maps, predefined damage assessment routes for this, and a whiteboard with a large map on it of the area and the damage assessment routes documented on them. Apparently, that is not sufficient because you have people who are coming who don't know the area, and if they aren't briefed properly, they can go the wrong direction, and it is human nature to not admit that you don't know what you're doing, and people will persist in going in the wrong direction even though they know they're going in the wrong direction because they don't want to seem like they don't know what's going on. So part of that briefing should be, as staging manager, you'd bring the team over and go, okay, here's the giant map of the area. You are the red line on here. You see on your maps, on your clipboards, you have a map of the route that you're going to be taking. You see the red line drawn out on the map here. This is the direction you're going to be going. We're here at the center. This is the staging area. That is south. And then you point them in the correct direction of where they're going to be leaving the staging area, so that they at least get in the right direction leaving the staging area, and hopefully then they can follow the map. That is something that we are working on, is getting these maps better so that they're more readable and they're easier to follow. But of course, it is a process, and every area is different, and we're still working on that. Judy, did you have a quick question?
Yeah, do you want to tell people how to get those big maps or how to make them?
We're working on that right now. So we're going to partner with you and help you with that. It's not something that you should feel the need to go out and buy a map of the area or invest heavily. We're working with neighborhood councils. We're working to bring resources in. We have different government agencies who can print these maps for us. So it shouldn't be something that is up to you to figure out on your own. When we have damage assessment teams going out, we were initially saying that these staging areas could cover about a mile radius. As we actually plotted these maps out and these damage assessment routes, we discovered that as you zigzag through your neighborhood on a damage assessment route, a mile out and back is not a mile out and back. It turns out to be more like 7 to 10 miles, depending on how zigzaggy your street is. Your neighborhood is. So the areas that you're able to really assess is going to be dependent on how your neighborhood layout is. But we're now saying more like a 5-block radius is really what you can realistically cover. And that will hopefully put it into the realm of about a 3-mile walk for the damage assessment route. Where, like I said, every neighborhood's going to be different, so there's no hard and fast rule here. However, a 3-mile walk is something that's doable within an hour. A 10-mile walk is not. So we really want our damage assessment teams to be able to cover their route in about an hour and not overtax the people who are walking it. Remember, a lot of us are not as physically fit as we'd like to be, and we're carrying a heavy bag that we have never actually practiced with. And you don't want to find out 10 minutes out from the staging area that you're in a lot of pain and that you've made some seriously unfortunate life decisions with what you packed into your bag. And now the entire team has to turn around and come back. So we do encourage you to practice with your bags. If you have disaster bags, CERT bags, there is the propensity to overpack them and make them, about half your body weight. That's probably not the best thing to do. Unless you're able to lift it and walk 10 miles with it, then more power to you. But you have to be realistic with your own limitations on this. And I encourage everybody to try and get out, exercise. Even if you're not responding to a damage assessment team and incident response team, there have been incidents where You're sitting on the freeway and a wildfire jumps the freeway and blocks your route. And now everyone on this freeway, let's call it the 15, has to get out and walk several miles back to the nearest off-ramp. Or you happen to be in New York and there's a citywide power outage, and now you have to walk miles over the streets instead of taking the subway to get back to your home. These things do happen. So if you can't walk a mile, and not everybody can, and for obvious reasons and for very real reasons, but I would start trying to get out there. Personally, I don't know that I can walk a mile. I need to get to the gym tonight. It's been a while. And that's with radios. The 5-block radius is with radios. If you don't have two-way radios, you're realistically going to be limited to the distance that a runner can do in a timely fashion. And so realistically, you're looking at about a 2-block radius away from the staging area, and a runner can make that in maybe 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how far those blocks are. And then that's to and back. So you're sending the runner to staging to let them know what's going on, and the runner has to come back to let you know staging response. Two-way radios make everything so much better. That's why we are training on them, and that's why we are including them in the staging area kits. When you're deployed in a team, the general rule of thumb is you want to radio in every 15 minutes, or when an incident is discovered, or when you change direction. The 15 minutes is if you have not reported into the staging area for whatever reason within 15 minutes. If you take a turn and you report that you've taken a turn, that resets that 15-minute clock. The reason is that staging needs to know where you are. They only know your last known location. And so if it's been 30 minutes and you've walked several blocks out in the completely wrong direction, staging has no idea where you are. If it's now an hour and you haven't checked in and they need to send a team looking for you because you might have gotten injured, something might have happened to you, they have utterly no idea where you are. So always report in every 15 minutes, or when an incident discovered, or when you take a turn. Update them, let staging know where you are. Radio communication should sound something like this. Staging, this is DAT East. We're turning north on Havenhurst. They're tracking you on the map, and based on your last location, they're following the route that you should be taking. They should be easily able to track where you are on that turn to Havenhurst. Or staging, this is DAT Alpha. We are 5 blocks north on Havenhurst and turning west onto Davenport. A little bit longer transmission, but it is a little bit more exact, and maybe it's easier for staging to find you on the map. When you report an incident, when you discover an incident as a damage assessment team, you want to report it, document it, triage any severe injuries, stabilize them, and then move on. You're not there to be an incident response team. You're not there to treat them. You need to complete your damage assessment route. If you stop and spend an hour at every single little incident that you discover, your damage assessment will never get complete. You won't know if there's something worse the next block up because you got held up at the first incident that you encountered. Don't get sucked into the incident. What you can do is, because you also, these people, if you have someone who's injured and they're begging for help from you, you don't want to abandon them, but you still need to complete the mission. And so what you're going to do is try and stabilize them, make it so that they can be safe long enough for the incident response team to get there, and let them know that you've reported this into the command post. We don't use command post in anywhere else in the slide, but if you tell them you report it to the staging area, they might not know what that means. It's unclear. It's something that we're using internally, but command post, everybody knows. It's something that just sounds official, sounds important, and sounds like you're going to get help from the command post. So this is the one time we're going to use the word command post, when you're talking to the public who doesn't know any better. And that the command post is going to send help as soon as they can. So they just need to wait, and help is on the way. This may be a lie. You might be the only team out there right now, but you still need to complete the damage assessment. And if you're waiting there for an ambulance to come that's not coming, you're never going to complete that damage assessment. But you're trying to make sure that the people that you're trying to help, and you're trying to help the greatest number of people in the shortest amount of time, you can't just help one person. The radio communication should sound something like this. Staging, this is DAT East. We have a 3-car collision at the intersection of Bob Hope and Greenwood. Please provide an incident number. You're following the 5 W's that we talk about in our radio communications class. Who are you trying to reach? Who are you? Where are you? What do you have? And what do you need? In fact, that's out of order. It should actually sound like staging. This is DAT East. You wait for staging to acknowledge you. DAT East, go ahead. Staging, this is DAT East. We're at the intersection of Bob Hope and Greenwood. We have a 3-car collision. Please provide an incident number. Who are you trying to reach? Who are you? Where are you? What do you have and what do you need? You're asking for that incident number because you're going to be getting more information for staging, and you don't want to keep saying over the radio regarding the 3-car collision at Bob Hope and Greenwood. It's regarding incident number 5. And when staging calls DAT East from staging, do you have an update on incident number 5? You don't have to say, do you have an incident on that an update on that 3-car collision at Bob Hope and Greenwood? It makes things so much easier. Staging should reply back, DAT East, incident number is 5. Please report details when you have them. Staging understands that you don't have that information yet. You're reporting an incident, you're going to investigate more. They're providing the incident number and they're expecting to get more information from you. But we're using plain English. We're just saying it out loud, and hopefully it makes everything clearer and the expectations are set. Following up on that, staging. This is DAT East reporting on incident number 5. We have 3 vehicles, 2 head-on and 1 T-bone in the middle of the intersection of Bob Hope and Greenwood. 7 victims total, 2 immediate, 3 delayed, and 2 walking wounded. Immediate is a 15-year-old female with a femoral bleed. We've applied a tourniquet and treating for shock. Perfusion is 5 seconds. Immediate number 2 is a 65-year-old male with possible chest injury and breathing rapidly. You're providing matter-of-fact information. You're providing what is critical to staging to know. How many victims do you have and the nature of them? They really care about the immediates. We don't care about those 3 delayed. We're going to get help there, but we need to know the nature of the criticalness of those 2 immediates. And when you're providing communication regarding a medical patient, it is age, sex, and chief complaint. 15-year-old female with a femoral bleed. You're telling staging we applied a tourniquet so they know that you've done something and hopefully that has stabilized them. You're also treating them for shock. And perfusion is 5 seconds. So they know that this femoral bleed has already messed with this person and they are probably spiraling downwards. So that is not something that can wait an hour. They need immediate medical attention. 65-year-old male, possible chest injury. It's very apparent this person has a chest injury, but you're not diagnosing them. They're breathing rapidly. That's your indication of what it is. There is nothing you can really do about this person, but staging now knows how critical that is. This person is in bad shape and they are probably spiraling downwards. So hopefully they can get a medical response team out there. Hopefully they can get paramedics out there because that's what these people need is paramedics urgently. It might also be that they're going to have to transport these people to the hospital because paramedics are not available. So now we need to get a vehicle out there, and we know that we have 2 people that need to get transported to the hospital ASAP. Next 3 people who arrive at the staging area are going to be the second damage assessment team. Depending on how bad it is, you can handle, as one person, you can handle 2 damage assessment teams reporting in. Anything more than that, and it really exceeds your ability to operate the staging area, check people in, and also take incidents from your damage assessment teams in the field. If you have more than 2 damage assessment teams, you need to augment your staging area immediately with the next people who show up. If you're overwhelmed by the first damage assessment team, you want to consider augmenting your staging area instead of sending out that damage assessment team. It's all situational. It's all based upon what you can handle and how bad things are. If you're not getting too many calls coming through, get the second damage assessment team out. You don't need another couple people hanging out the staging area, delaying the response just for getting that staging area augmented. That second damage assessment team should go in the opposite direction of the first team. At the very least, if you can get 2 geographic directions, but it's all going to be neighborhood dependent, you're in a lot better shape than if you just have 1 team out there, or no teams out there for that matter. And that team, if following the previous example, that team would be DAT West, DAT East is in the field, or if you're doing DAT Alpha, your next team would be DAT Bravo. After you get 2 damage assessment teams in the field, you're going to augment your staging area, but now you're going to be considering, what else do I need? Do I need a 3rd damage assessment team in the field, or do I need incident response teams? And that's going to be based upon how the reports are coming in. If you have a lot of injuries out there, you really need to start considering incident response teams to go treat them. If you're hearing nothing, people are not injured, there's no reports of damage, get the 3rd damage assessment team out there. Cover the area, find out how bad it is, because it could be that all the damage has occurred in one area and you haven't even sent a team out to that area yet. But start considering, as people are coming in, their skill level. If you have people who are medically trained and you have a couple field damage assessment teams in the field, you might want to consider holding back those people who are medically trained for your incident response team, because that's where you're going to need them. The incident response teams are going to be larger than the damage assessment teams. Damage assessment team is going to be 3 people: your team leader, your radio operator, and your scribe. Your incident response team is going to be those 3 same core function people: the team leader, the radio operator, and the scribe, but you're going to have working pairs as well who are going to be doing the response portion of this. And you can have teams up to 7. A 5-person team, that would be the 3 radio operator, scribe, and team leader, and a working pair, that's a total of 5. Or a team of 7 is going to be 2 working pairs. It depends on your resources. Sometimes you might just have to get that 1 5-person team out there and get them in the field instead of waiting for more people to show up. When you're staffing your staging area, you're really looking at radio operators and scribes helping you out. A scribe is someone who's documenting. They should have good penmanship. They should be able to read their handwriting, but they should be comfortable writing, because sometimes a lot of this information comes in like a fire hose. And if you're not adept at writing things down in an orderly and clear fashion, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. Same thing with the radio operator. If you have an inexperienced radio operator, it's very easy to get overwhelmed on the radio. It's not the time to learn to be a radio operator right after the earthquake, nor is it time to be a scribe. So we do these drills to give you practice at doing these things, because we're going to feed incidents in. It's going to be very similar to what we expect to happen in an actual incident after an earthquake. The same flow, the same chaos that's going to happen. So try and attend the in-person drills that we do, or if we do tabletop online, to get the feel of it and see where you are, because maybe you think you're going to be a great radio operator until you're put on the spot and suddenly you realize you're not as good as you thought you were. There's a couple key pieces that you need to staff when you're at the staging area. Staffing, and that's documenting people as they come in, document registration with their skills and abilities, as well as who gets assigned to a team, because we need to track our people. Everyone goes home safely. And if you lose someone in the paperwork, you don't know to check on them. They could be lying in a ditch somewhere because somebody lost track of them and now you've just failed the mission. Response, and that's you want someone to take over the radio as soon as you can. It might not be the first duty that you delegate, but it should be one of the high priority ones because the staging manager has to have the big picture. If you're talking with the teams on the radio, that's the focus that you have, is talking to the teams on the radio, but not really seeing the big picture. Where are the incidents? Where do I need to get help right now? When I get this incident response team out there, I've got 15 incidents. I need to prioritize them. And if I'm focused on talking to this person on the radio and talking with this team on the radio, it really dilutes your ability to function at a high level. So really consider getting that radio away from you. I know we're all type A personalities. We don't want to give up control. Fight that urge. Trust the people you put in. Check on them, make sure they're doing what you need them to do. But once you assign a role, trust them to do it. If you discover that they're not capable of doing it, try and do some corrective action, give them constructive feedback. But if they're still failing at the mission, reassign the role. Say, okay, I need you to take over this. Sammy, come here. I need you to take over radio. And you don't need to tell them that they're doing a horrible job and they're embarrassing themselves. Don't put them down. Reassign them to somewhere that is less critical so that they can excel at something else and that you can put the right people in the right position. We will do training on leadership. It is an art and it is not something that's simple, especially if you're not doing this. And especially even if you do this for a living and you have paid employees that you boss around, if you boss volunteers around like a paid lackey, paid staff member, someone who you have a negative view of, the volunteer will walk away. They can do that. So be very careful about your leadership style. Understand that everybody is there because they want to be there, but they're easily discouraged. And so, again, we're going to have training on leadership in future trainings. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Tracking incidents in the map and tracking team assignments and locations. You need to know where your teams are at any given point or where they were in the last 15 minutes at the very least. Every time they call in, update the team location on the map so that you know that last location. That's why they're giving you their location when they call in. As the response grows, you really want to focus on that augmenting the staging area. We see this where you have one person at staging with the radio, with the clipboard, and you have 3 teams in the field, and they are mad trying to catch all the radio communication. And it's just nonstop coming in. They're no longer the staging manager. They're no longer in charge of anything. They are on the radio and they are completely lost. It is something you need to be aware of and catch yourself as you start to become overwhelmed. You really need to focus on making sure that you provide enough support for yourself so the staging area does not collapse underneath you or on top of you for that matter. Additional roles that we do need to get responders to, if we can, public gathering areas and family reunification areas. We want to encourage the public to go over there, out of the way over there, out of my way, out of our way over there. And if we have these areas defined, okay, go to the park over there. That's the gathering area for this area. We're going to send a team over there and get your information. Gives them something to do and gets them out of your hair. Because if you don't, you say, okay, staging area is this way, just down the block behind the Costco in the backside of it. And suddenly staging area just gets slammed with people who've been told to go there. They're not going to be happy. They're not going to be able to function. Who told you to come here? So always know where the public gathering area is so that you can send people there, and then send a team over there as soon as you can so that they can communicate. Because a lot of the information coming in will come from these public gathering areas. It will come from the people who are coming. And maybe there are people there who are able-bodied and able to help. So now you can say, okay, you seem to understand what's going on. You've provided a good amount of information. You seem able-bodied enough. Do you want to help out with the response? Okay, now staging area is this way. And just go down this block to the right behind the Costco. And staging, this is the public gathering area. We're sending a couple convergent volunteers to your location, so they're aware that they're coming. And again, using radios. You want to make sure this, the public gathering area is in communication with staging using radios and runners if you have to, but ideally with radios. The other purpose of these public gathering areas is, especially long-term over several days, is there will be points of time where the city will be releasing information at key intervals, prescribed intervals. There will be press conferences. This is an area that people can come to and you will relay that information, or if there are public officials who are going to come and speak publicly, they're going to go to the public gathering areas. And so people should know when these announcements are going to happen. And generally speaking, you'll be that conduit saying, okay, come back here at 10 in the morning. And then at 6 o'clock at night, that's when we're going to have the briefing and give you any updates about what's going on. Two-way radio communication is critical. It is a skill that you need to learn and you need to practice. If you pick up a radio and you think that you are going to be able to use this radio when you've never used a radio before, awesome if you are able to do it. But seriously, it is not something that's easy. And it sounds easy. It's push to talk, release to listen. But what happens is when you pick up the radio and you push the push to talk button, your brain goes blank. You think you know what you're going to say, and then you click the radio and you sound staging. Who am I? We're damage assessment team. Yeah. And what was the next thing I need to give? And you hear this on the radio. What I recommend is you write down what you're going to say before you say it. And if you're paired with a scribe who is on the ball, they're already anticipating what you need to report in. They're going to bullet point it for you on their clipboard. They're going to flip it around. And it's going to say staging, damage assessment team alpha. We're at the corner of walk and don't walk. Three vehicle collision, 2 immediate, 1 delayed injuries. And then you can read it off the clipboard almost verbatim. Every point is a bullet point. Staging, damage assessment team alpha. We're at the corner of walk and don't walk. We have a 3-car collision with 2 immediates, 1 delayed. We need an incident response number. That's all you need to do on the radio. In terms of the way that radio communication is going to work is that ideally, everyone should have what's called a family radio service, FRS radio. And these you can buy pretty much anywhere. You can buy them at Best Buy, Costco, Sam's Club, Target occasionally, Amazon for sure. And we are in the process of making recommendations on a radio. We're testing them so we can actually give concrete recommendations. At this point, I suggest you just go on Amazon and look at reviews. Search for family radio service, FRS radio, and you're going to see a lot of them out there at different price points. Don't buy the most expensive one. It's probably not going to do you any better than a mid-range one, but don't get the cheapest one either. Read the reviews, see how other people who have used these radios, how they actually like them. If everyone has these radios, then everyone can communicate. Additionally, we're going to provide radios in the staging area kit. That's great if you have a staging area kit in your area. Not so great if you don't have one. But what we want to do is provide a radio that is standardized, that you can train on, that we can practice and know the range and limitation of them. If everybody brings a random FRS radio, we're going to have a lot of trouble with radio communications because some will perform better than others and some will perform a lot worse than others. And so if you have someone communicating on a $10 FRS radio they're not going to hear much, and you're not going to be able to hear them at very long range. Versus if everybody has a mid-range radio, at least they're going to perform closer together. So the radios that we provide in the staging area kit, those are going to get assigned to the team. Each team will get one of them. The radio operator will get them, and they're going to be able to communicate back with staging. Your fallback is those FRS radios that you have. And this is especially important if you're working on an incident response team, because now internally the team can actually communicate. If you have a couple working pairs and you encounter something, another incident on the way in, you can have one of those working pairs split off from the main team and actually check and investigate the person who they just discovered. Of course, you're letting staging know that this is happening, but you don't want to just orphan them and say, okay, we're down the road. Good luck finding us. But if they're on FRS, they can at least say, all right, Echo team, this is Echo 2. We've stabilized the this sub incident, or this incident number 7, and we're on our way to join the main team. And then they can direct you in over the FRS radio. That's what's called tactical communication. It's within the team. It's very localized. Strategic communication is the teams talking to staging. It's the bigger picture. You want to also keep that strategic communication clear. You don't want to have a lot of extra communication on your main communications. So the FRS team comms can be used for a little more verbose communication, a little more information. Hey, team leader, this is Echo 2. We have something weird with the incident number 7. Could use some advice on here. And so you're able to help each other out a little bit more on the tactical side without tying up the main communication lines. Do keep in mind that there are a limited number of FRS channels, and do keep in mind that there are probably a lot of people out there with FRS, and that if you don't use PL tones, you're going to hear a lot of noise. It's going to be very distracting and very annoying. But if you are using PL tones, that you could be stepping on other people. Generally speaking, you're going to be very short range on these radios, so you're focused on communicating close by, and you don't care about what else is going on in the big picture farther out. So it's not as big a deal as some people might make it out to be. But those PL tones are going to be very good at blocking that interference, noise from weaker signals that are too far out for you to actually hear, but they're going to open up your radio and you're going to hear static. Or there's some sort of interference in the air, and you're going to hear that come through. What happens if you do hear that is people will instinctively turn down the volume so they don't have to hear it. And now you don't have a radio, you have a rock attached to your belt clip. What we want is the staging area to also be in contact with other nearby staging areas. You're sharing information, you're finding out who has resources, who needs resources. If your area is relatively unimpacted and you have 2 full-blown incident response teams, you've completed your damage assessment, you can spare resources. And sometimes there's going to be a staging area where no one showed up and they have been slammed and they need a lot of help. So you're able to provide that kind of mutual aid to your neighbors. Additionally, you're going to be communicating with someone above you, CERT battalion command team or liaison team that's trying to interface with the fire department. The end goal here is to be able to report up to the fire department from the ground level and say, you've got a flipped over bus with 6 immediates and you've triaged them, you've stabilized them, but they need to get extubated. They need an ambulance. They need the fire department because there's nothing more you can do. Fire department doesn't know about this. Your cell phones don't work. 911 is ringing busy. No one can report this in except for us through our 2-way radios. Communicating back to staging. Staging prioritizes this and then kicks us up to the liaison team at the fire department command post. And now the fire department gets that incident reported in, and now they can figure out what to do about it. We do these trainings over and over again because we know it's a lot of information. what we are going to do is we're going to start planning actual more in-person training. What we want to do are little pop-up trainings, so it doesn't require a lot of planning, and then do them in the open so that we can be spread out a little bit. We're looking at doing a training on October 3rd. I know it's Yom Kippur. I apologize to our Hebrew friends. We were looking at doing a weekend drill, so hopefully October 3rd will work for more people. I will probably do it in the morning, but we're going to have these spread out. We're going to do them at different times. Sometimes they'll be on Saturday, sometimes they'll be on Sunday, sometimes they'll be in the morning, sometimes they'll be in the evening, sometimes they'll be weeknights. We're going to spread this around so that everybody gets a chance to attend. The next, the October 3rd one, we're still in the very early planning stages, but we'll let everybody know when we get it, the date locked down and the location. We're going to practice setting up the staging area. We're going to practice signing people in and deploying out damage assessment teams and communicating over the radios, just to get that muscle memory done, because we see over and over again at the drills that we do that people are not ready for them. So we want to prep you. We want you to practice. We want you to get the muscle memory so when you show up at the actual drill, you're able to execute and you're not fumbling around going, I know there was a step-by-step guide that Patrick talked about. Oh yeah, he printed it for me. Maybe I should read it. And then you don't read it and you don't know how to follow the step-by-step guide. So we're going to beat you over the head about the step-by-step guides that we wrote. Speaking of which, if you go to documents.ntp-la.org, see that link right there, and we'll put it in the chat. You can find our documents, our document package, including the step-by-step guides. We recommend that you read them. We recommend that you provide feedback because maybe you see something that we didn't and you've got some great insight and we want to incorporate in the next revision. When we get this scheduled, it will be up on our calendar, and that's going to be at calendar.ntp-la.org. Yes, I believe Yom Kippur started at sundown, right? Today? Yeah, so bad timing. There are 3 recurring trainings and radio nets that we have every 3rd Wednesday of the month, today being the 3rd Wednesday of the month. We have this continuing education series. Next one is going to be October 20th. It'll be at 7 p.m. We don't have a subject on it yet. As soon as we do, we'll get that event right up. On the 4th Wednesday of the month, that is next Wednesday, September 22nd, is our 2-way radio training. What we do is we bring in facilitators and we put you on a team with them, and they give you incidents and you discuss as a team how you're going to encounter the incident, what you're going to do, and then someone's going to radio it into staging. So you get that little bit more tabletop experience of trying to figure out these incidents, what you're going to be doing and communicating. And then every Monday night at 7:15 p.m., we use the LAFD Zello app on our phones so that we can test radio protocol, just checking into a net, getting experience using our call signs. We do encourage everybody, if you haven't yet, to sign up at, I'll put it in the chat again, join.ntp-la.org. And that's how you can request a Zello call sign. There are only 4 people in California right now. We know that we have people coming from all over the country attending these trainings, but if you sign up and request a call sign and you're from Boston, we're not going to give you one at the moment, just so that we have some sort of span of control. But you're encouraged to sign up so you get our emails and find out about the upcoming trainings. And like I said, as soon as we get the location for the October 3rd and a date and time, or a time for it, we'll let everybody know about that as well. So, any questions? Tanya Joy, do you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you able to hear me, Patrick?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Do you hear me?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. I want to ask why we don't use Zello, since everybody has a phone, you know, an app, I mean, an iPhone or an Android. Why don't we use those phones rather than getting an FRS phone?
Because those rely on the cell network to function or some sort of internet connection. And we know right after the earthquake that will fail. Every single earthquake, even if it's a minor one, you're at the epicenter, your cell network is not going to be in good shape because everyone's going to be making phone calls on it and it can't handle that amount of traffic.
Well,
Plus,
how
if any of the
does that
towers
work?
go down, power's out.
Mhm.
Adriana?
Thanks, Pat. So Pat, you mentioned a really good scenario is that, you know, each one of us has a different brand, a different range of walkie. So my thoughts are like I carry long range, medium range and short range just because I don't really know who's going to be able to hear me. And I have those always at the ready. But eventually what's going to occur is that if I can't reach anyone, what's your recommendation in terms of putting out a signal? How often within a 24-hour period to see if anyone's listening in? Because I'm thinking of possibly getting a ham radio just as that final preparatory, I guess, recommendation.
One of the reasons why we do the FRS nets is to learn who in our area we can communicate with. So you know who you're trying to reach out to. I highly encourage you to get a ham radio, get your license, and then find out there's a lot of groups out there all over the city that you can communicate with and link in. So at least at the very least, you're able to communicate with somebody. But it's going to be very geographic and neighborhood specific for your local FRS anyway.
Yeah, so there's really no set time as to how often to channel surf to see if anybody's listening.
Ideally, you want to have that planned ahead of time because also if they're using PL tones, they won't be able to hear you and you won't know what their PL tone is. So even if you do hear someone, it might not be useful. But if you have that set up, you have a group of neighbors that already have the PL tone set in the channel, then check in with them periodically. And as soon as they come up, let them know as soon as they turn their radio on to monitor and then check in. So I don't have a recommendation on how often to check in. I would say maybe every 20, 30 minutes, especially if you know that there's people out there listening. Judy.
It also sounds like you might be concerned about being isolated in some way. And if you carry a whistle with you, you know that the teams in your area, once you start setting up this kind of coordination and organization for your neighborhood, then they're going to go out and look for people who might be isolated for some reason or another and can't either talk on FRS or can't be found. So carrying a whistle, which is just a little thing, but they'll be listening for whistles also.
There's a question in the chat. What is a PL tone? PL is a private line tone. What it does is it makes the radio listen for someone transmitting on the same PL tone as you, private line tone, and then it won't open up. Otherwise, if you don't, the radio is going to pick up anything and just start making noise. And if it's someone communicating, you'll hear them. And if it's someone outside of your range, it might still make noise. The PL tone will cut down on that. So you only hear someone who's specifically in range talking to you or on your PL tone. And this isn't about radio communication, so it's just a quick explanation. Don't think too much about it. Document site on Safari would not let you sign up. Let me test that real fast. You went to documents.ntp-la.org. It's working for me. I'm not sure. Maybe there's something wrong with your redirect. Here's where it redirects to. You can try that link. Maybe that'll work. If you've requested a Zello call sign and haven't gotten one yet, go ahead and sign up again and put that you're either updating your profile or there's a problem with it, and I'll get that out to you. Sometimes you just need to check your junk mail folder. That might have gone out there. I'm not as quick as I'd like to be about getting these call signs out, since sometimes it does take me a week or so. Zello is a radio, two-way radio app on your cell phone, and we use it right now in the lack of being able to meet in person, so that we can practice using radios. But it actually happens to be a very useful system that we've been building just to train with and to have available to us, because you can communicate with your local neighborhood when you're out of town. And so if there's something going on, you can have that always on. It's always a radio in your pocket. Sue Ellen.
As a hiker and as a ham, there are 3 times of the day to save your battery, 7 a.m., noon, 7 p.m., that emergency channels are monitored.
7 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. That's really good to know. Any other questions?
Can I get a little more information on that comment? I don't exactly know what that means.
To save your radio battery, so you're not having it on all the time, a lot of emergency radio monitoring stations will turn on at 7 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. And that's when you can do your break. We have an emergency lost hiker. And
What stations are those, Sue Ellen? Do you know the frequencies or the stations?
I would have to research that. Thank God I haven't had to use them.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. That's great.
Okay.
If you are a ham radio operator, there are on UHF and VHF, there are specific hailing channels or frequencies that are where you can go and theoretically other people would be listening to. That might be a good place to start. I don't know specifically what they are offhand. I know I have them programmed into my radio, but I have no interest in chatting with people on the radio, so I don't use them.
Homework for both of us.
Yeah. Doreen?
Do you have any training areas where we can go and start our training other than with these monthly or weekly sessions
I don't know who's got training programs up right now.
for the license? I mean, for a license.
Oh, for ham radio license, I would check with AARL. I think it's aarl.net. They're the Amateur Radio something league. And they do run, and I typoed that. ARRL, right?
American Radio Relay League.
Relay League. Thank you. ARRL.net. They do run ham testing. They're doing remote. They're doing ham testing over Zoom. I don't know the specifics on it, but I do know that people are getting their ham licenses through that.
Also, some of those classes are listed on Eventbrite, so check there.
Matt?
Unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. The frequencies the other gentleman referenced, where you the simplex frequencies, where you just tune it to the frequency and talk. Those frequencies in the VHF and the UHF, respectively, are 146.52 megahertz and 446 megahertz.
Someone just posted that in the chat as well.
I'm not looking at the chat. There are two other websites that are of interest. Those are repeaterbook.com for amateur radio repeaters, and there's also radioreference.com if you want scanner frequencies or other local radio information. There's that. I think that's all I had to say.
What was the second one?
Radioreference.com.
Yeah, I'm not going to attempt to spell that right now. Oh, there it is.
That
Radio
that
reference.
repeater book is an app also you can put on your phone.
Yes, Repeater Book has an app on your phone. It's quite good. Figures out your location and say, hey, there's repeaters within 25-mile radius or 50-mile radius of where I am now.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Good idea.
So if you
Thank you.
travel to a certain destination rather often, then yeah, you can punch those frequencies into your handy-talkie or your mobile radio, and there you go.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Next.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, you can always reach out to me. Yeah, Judy.
Just saying, loved it. I think this is, I've been listening to these kinds of presentations for a long time, and I love them, and I think they're very useful, but this is one that's kind of singular, and that people don't give you the nuts and bolts on staging, which is the first thing we're going to come across. You can get educated all day long. I mean, educated, you get organized all day long, but until you really get faced with it, you don't ask yourself, oh my God, what's next? Or where's that pencil I forgot to put in the box, or something like that. So thank you for this, because this series is wonderful, and this is one of the ones that's pretty unique. So thanks.
Yeah. And like I said, the in-person it's one thing to watch a presentation, but if you don't actually get the hands-on, the chances of you being able to execute right after an earthquake, when your adrenaline's rushing and you're trying to remember what you learned 6 months ago, it's not going to be successful. So we're going to do these pop-up staging area trainings over and over again, all over the city, just so that we can get people coming back and practicing and practicing and practicing. And we want to make sure that you're able to execute it correctly. So we're not going to have a lot of distractions. We're not going to have 1,500 FRS calls coming in that you have to track down. We're not going to have incidents out there in the field that you're going to have to go find. It's all about getting the step-by-step guide correct, getting that staging area set up, getting people signed in correctly, breaking them up into teams, sending them out, communicating, executing the guide, so that when you do encounter the chaos, you can fall back on what this should look like without the chaos. Know what the ideal is, so that you have a goal of where to get to. And if you have any questions about that, you can feel free to reach out to me at LAFD CERT Central at mycertteam.com. I just posted that in the chat. Brian, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, do you have any idea when you're going to come out with the recommendations on the FR radios?
I believe our goal is end of October.
Okay, thank you. Very good meeting.
Thank you. All right. I'll stay on for a little bit if you have any questions. Otherwise, we don't want to keep you longer than we need to. So thank you very much for attending, and hope to see some of you on October 3rd.
Bye, everybody. See ya. See you on the next one.
Thanks, Patrick. Great time.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
You're welcome. Bye.
Big
Good
work.
job, Patrick. This is Johnny Gursky.
Hey, Johnny. Glad you're able to make it.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Good job.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you do these in-person ones, meetings, where are they, and do people wear masks at these? And are they social distance? Is it outdoors or indoors?
Yes, we will have full pandemic protocol. We will be providing N95 masks, and they will be outdoors and socially distanced as much as we can.
Okay, and where would this be?
We're working on finding a location for the October 3rd one. And then if you have any recommendations for location in your area, I would guess a park would be a great place to do it. These don't have to be anything overly complicated. In fact, these should be really lightweight and just easy to approach.
Okay, can I suggest a place?
Sure, absolutely.
Dominic Massari Park in Palmdale.
That's a little outside of LA City. But you know, maybe if you've got a group up there that's interested in training, we can help you out with that.
Okay, I'll let them know. Antelope Valley CERT. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all your presentation was really great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey Patrick, this is James. I've been attending these in the radios, and I got a call sign on the Zello, so thank you very much. These have been great. I'm over in the West Adams district, off of 2nd Avenue, Arlington Avenue and 24th Street. There's Benny Parter Park. We'd love to have you guys come in, and we could all, I get the neighborhood together to do a whole program.
We actually we just did a neighborhood team program in West Adams, and we just did a drill in August. So reach out to me and we'll put you in touch with those people.
Yeah, okay. Because that one I heard about it after the fact, which is weird. And then the one last Saturday I couldn't get to, the one that you had down in Furman or where just south of me. So, but anyway, I will. Thank you.
All right. You have my email address?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. Candy.
You probably already thought about this, but for the whole Hollywood Hills and Los Feliz area, Griffith Park would be a perfect place. The part that's near Ferndale, which is kind of like at Western and Los Feliz, would be good, or farther down in the actual major part of the park would also work for getting a whole bunch of people there.
We actually do a monthly hike in the Griffith Park area typically. So yes, some of our members are very familiar with that park, and that's probably a very good location for up in this area. You're right.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent session today.
Thank you.
As usual.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna go get some food. If you have any questions or need to get a hold of me, my email address again is LAFD CERT Central at mycertteam.com. 2 T's. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.